Hey guys, I decided to come back and set this video up because this clown right here told me in the comments that I'll put up on the screen in a minute that he would mop the floor with me in a legal debate. However, he refused to debate me because he said I wasn't his equal. And he certainly got that correct. So I thought I would make a video and show you that since he won't debate with me and we're not equals. I'll agree with that and I'm going to prove it in this video. So let's roll that beautiful bean footage. I usually don't do videos like this, but in this case, I really felt like I had to. I thought long and hard about it before posting it because it's just not my kind of video. I don't usually call out other YouTubers or educators or anything, but this guy is a perfect example of why they try to call sovereigns crazy sovereign citizens because of the insane antics that this guy pulls. And so they take people who respect the law and care about their freedoms and lump them into a category with this guy. And I'll tell you, I don't want to be lumped into a category with this guy with his big fake jewelry on a string. Anyway, so I started not to make the video until he started insulting me in the comments and saying he would mop the floor with me and this kind of thing. But really, the real reason I need to make this video is because this guy's teaching a lot of people and they're gonna look like idiots, waste their time, waste their resources, waste their money over idiocy that this guy told them. And I am on the do not detain list, so I know of what I speak. I've also been in and out of the courts, and that goes from everything from the JP and municipal courts all the way up to the Federal Court of Appeals. So I've had a little bit of experience with this stuff. So I just wanted to point out real quick a couple of things that will make it very clear why this guy makes everybody look crazy because he just doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's got good subscription rate and good views. I mean, this video got over 1,000 views. And he apparently has over 3,000 viewers. The problem with that is that views don't equal education and knowledge. So let me real quick break down just a couple of things and you're going to see very quickly what it is that I'm talking about. Now, the first place is around 2.5 minutes where he starts talking about non-adverse party and rules of procedure.
Allegations made by that guy. The issue with that is, and the courts is clear on this, in order to serve you effectively, efficiently, according to the rules of procedure, it has to be a non-adverse party, a person that is not privy, that has nothing to do with the situation, because they have to be disinterested. They have to have nothing to do with the situation. The officer is the one that stopped you. The officer is the one that gave you the summons. The officer.
Okay, the officer did not give you a summons. The officer gave you a citation. And if you read that citation, down at the bottom, it says, by signing, you agree to appear. So you're making a contract right there with that officer if you sign that. Your option to not sign it, as I've discussed in previous videos, is to go see the magistrate. You have the opportunity to tell the officer when he stops you, if he insists on giving you a ticket, you have the option to either sign the ticket and agree to show up in court at a later date, or you can go see the magistrate right away and not put it off to another date. But if you don't want to go right away, that's why you sign the ticket saying you'll show up on this date at that time. So he's not giving you a summons, he's giving you a citation. So that's the first legal term that Mr. Robert Marshall, Bud Brownsville, doesn't understand, is what a summons is and what a citation is. Your summons is going to come from the court. As I said, it's not the police officer giving you a summons. He gives you a citation. And then you see here, the court is going to send you a summons to appear in that case, where the cop is going to be a witness. He's not serving you process. He's giving you a citation and asking you if you'll promise to appear. I've just explained your options there, but the summons comes from the court. That it's going to be the court that issues the summons, and then a process server is supposed to deliver that summons. So it's not actually the court or the cop that serves you summons. It's a process server, but summons is issued by the court, not the cop who issues the citation. As you can see on this summons right here. So Mr. Bud Brownsville has his terms very confused. He doesn't even know the basics of understanding legal terminology. He doesn't know the difference between a citation and a summons, or who issues them, how they're issued, or apparently what their purpose even is. I don't know. He's very confused. Pretty ignorant, but let's continue.
Is going to go to court testifying that you did something. So there's a conflict there. So that and other reasons.
Okay. There is a conflict, and that's because the police officer is going to testify as a witness for the plaintiff. And you, or whoever gets the ticket, Mr. Brownsville or whoever, would be the defendant. So you have a plaintiff, and then you have police officer. He's going to be a witness. And then you have your side. So, of course, he's adverse party. He's on the opposite side. So, of course, he is going to testify against you, and he is going to be an adverse party.
This is why traffic tickets, moving violations, citations, parking, all these things is easy to get rid of because of the defects and defaults with the process.
Show you the federal rules.
Okay, now he's going to show you the federal rules of civil procedure. You can see it on the screen. Federal rules of civil procedure. However, he's talking about going all kinds of places in this video, except for a federal civil court. It's the only place he doesn't talk about going. He talks about going to a municipal court. He talks about traffic tickets, which again would be municipal or JP or sometimes county. He even talks about going to the county clerk, which we'll get into for a second, but all of these other courts have their own local rules. So you're going to have to look at the rules of the court you're under. You're not in a federal civil procedure when you have a traffic ticket or moving violation or something like that.
We're going to go to if you punch in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and I believe it's going to be Rule 4.
Okay, now I'm going to skip ahead just a second.
Right here, Rule 4, summons.
Okay, so now he's back to talking about a summons, but again, it's not the police officer who summons you, and it's not in a federal civil court. Also, you don't get a summons to court until after a complaint has been filed. So we'll get into that in a minute. But the next place I want to show you is at about 9:30. Now, you can go, and I encourage you to, go watch his entire video. I'm not going to watch through it again. I had to already to do the timestamps, and it was quite maddening. But let me, yeah, he's just going to go through the rules. Let's see what he's doing right here. Okay.
They'll tell you.
He's just talking about grandparents. We're going to skip over here to 9:30.
Rights. Now, if you call yourself, if you're allowed to be called a U.S. citizen with a small c, you are part of a club. And with the membership in that club has its rules and regulations. And part of the rules and regulations is that you are abiding by, or you agree to these stops. You agree to pay these fines and different things, or you're not going to argue them. You don't want to bite the hand that feeds you type thing, but they're not feeding you. But I think.
Okay, so being a U.S. citizen does not make an agreement to follow their rules and be stopped and pay fines. What the only contract you ever make with them to follow traffic rules is by getting a license. And we're going to see where Mr. Brown makes some mistakes on that as well here real soon. But no, being a U.S. citizen, whether it's you want to use a capital C or a small c, does not bind you to follow traffic rules. It just doesn't have anything to do with it.
You get the gist of what I'm saying. So when you are a U.S. citizen, you're a voter, you vote the legislature in, you vote the judiciary in, you vote these individuals in and make these laws. So if you voted for that governor, you voted for that mayor, you voted for that council person who in turn devises these bills that become law, then you agree with it because they're your representatives that came up with this stuff.
Well, just because a party gets elected into office doesn't mean you agree with anything. I'm not sure his premise here, but anyway.
I am a state citizen with a big C, which means I owe allegiance at this point to the state of Pennsylvania. Meaning if anyone that wants to do any persons, any inhabitants, any citizens of this state any harm, I am obligated, I am expected to defend the state. I am obligated, and when I say state, I mean the people of, like, I am obligated to look out for the people of the state, take up arms and protect my fellow citizen with the big C. The states powers is big, which is why when the mask mandate was handed down, they handed it down on the federal level, meaning any federal properties, any federal zones, post office, public roads, public transportation, anything federally related, that mandate applies to their schools. It doesn't apply to your home. It doesn't apply to outside my door. It technically doesn't apply to the grocery store, but the private grocery store owners can uphold that mandate. So the states decide whether we're going to adopt that or we're just going to ignore it, which is why federally marijuana has been decriminalized.
Okay, so let's just look at the mandate issue. I doubt he understands what a mandate is, so we're just going to take a look real quick. And this is a problem for all the United States because most people don't understand what a mandate is, but let's just take a look. It's a command or an authorization to act in a particular way on a public issue given by the electorate to its representative. In other words, from the people to their elected official. Secondly, a command from a superior court or official to a lower one. In this example, the appellate court resolved the appeal and issued a mandate to the district judge. An authoritative order or command. Number 4, in the League of Nations, it's a commission given to a nation to administer the government and the affairs of a former Turkish territory or German colony. We also see down here, it can be to authorize a decree or a particular action as by the enactment of law. The state legislator mandated an increase in the minimum wage. Okay, and that's the way laws are done in our country, by the legislature, not by mandate. Mandate is not law. And so I just wanted to point that out to everybody because if Mr. Bud Brownsville was trying to teach anybody, he should have pointed out that those mandates aren't for the general public. They don't apply to the general public. But this isn't the only time that he displays an ignorance of basic legal terms. But let's continue. I really don't know where he's going with this whole mandate thing, and he even seems to, if you watch his video, stop and ask himself where's he going. Nobody knows. At that point, I was already starting to lose it at 12 minutes into his video. But we're going to continue on, try to make this quick. Now, at 15 minutes and 45 seconds, he starts talking about putting your governor, mayor, your secretary of state, and your sheriff on notice. And like I said, I've done do not detain. I'm on the do not detain list, and it has nothing to do with your mayor, or I don't know what this guy's doing. We can talk about that do not detain in another video, but for right now, I just wanted to kind of stay on this. He also talks about a notice of default and creating a certificate of default to take to your notary. So let's look at that. Let's see.
Maybe you got lost in the mail. Maybe you just overlooked it. Maybe
well, we will back up because he's going to tell you what he's sending.
You're going to do it in an administrative process way. You're going to send the first letter. Sometimes they respond. Most of the time they don't. You send the second letter. It's called a notice of fault and opportunity to cure. That means I sent you something. You didn't respond. Maybe you got lost in the mail. Maybe you just overlooked it. Maybe you ran out of time. Here's an opportunity to address what I sent you. And make sure you get your henchmen off me or away from me and stop following me. Oftentimes, they don't respond to that second letter. You then send a third letter, which is a notice of default. I sent you a first letter. You ignored it or you didn't respond effectively. I sent you a second letter. I know you got it. You still didn't respond. So now you are in default. You send them that default paperwork, which they're still not going to respond. And now you take that default, which you could create a certificate of default and take it to your notary. Now,
I don't know what he's talking about, a certificate of default and creating a certificate of default. I've never heard of such a thing in all of my years of dealing with law. There's default judgments. I don't know what he's talking about, a certificate of default.
Getting along the process, because you know what? Let me do it like this. Let me take it step by step so you understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, let's do.
The first letter that you send to those public officials, you're not going to send yourself. The same defect of the officer handing you a ticket is the same defect of you actually giving or serving these individuals. Sometimes it's okay, and sometimes, or my process, no, I always use a third party to mail my correspondence. And I use a certificate of mailing, and I make sure I send a certified mail return receipt. So you send it to them via.
I also don't know what a certificate of mailing is. We do certified mail, and with that, you can also do a return receipt. But I've never heard of a certificate of mailing. There's a certificate of service that goes into legal paperwork at the end. If you're filing something into the court, then you do include a certificate of service in your court documents. And all that is a statement at the end that says, I certify a true and correct copy of this was sent on this day to these people at these addresses. So at this point, he wouldn't have one of those. So it's not a certificate of service he's talking about, or a jurat. So I don't know what a certificate of mailing that he's talking about is. Never heard of it in all of my years of doing law.
Another party. That party is a witness because that party put the stuff in the envelope, the letters in the envelope, the party mailed it. So now if you get called into, or you drag them into court, you can bring your witness that has nothing to do with you, not related to you, that says, yes, I mailed all 3 letters and I did not get a response. Neither did the plaintiff. So in your letters, you're going to address that, or you're going to state that you need to respond to Robert Marshall, aka Bud Brownsville, and you need to respond to the witness, the person that mails your letter. They're not going to respond to you guys. Sometimes they do, but they're not going to respond. The second letter goes out. Your guy, a notary, or your guy or girl is going to send that letter out. So this is the administrative process. Somebody is verifying that this letter was sent to that person. Your certified mail return receipt comes back that they signed for it, so they got it. So they can't say they didn't get it. After the third letter goes out, you now get a certificate of mailing. That's a
See, I don't know what that, I guess that he's talking about his return receipt.
Certificate of mailing is now your mailer certifying that, yes, I sent these documents out on behalf of the plaintiff, and the other party did not respond to me. And the plaintiff said they didn't respond to them. So they are in default. You can get a summary judgment on that. And whatever you listed in your notice now becomes true because it's like an unrebutted affidavit. It's also, you are demanding, in a sense, the public officials address your concerns, and they're not. So that certificate of mailing becomes a summary judgment.
Okay. So he keeps saying certificate of mailing, which I'm assuming, because he's not real clear, is his return receipt. However, he says that that turns into a summary judgment. Well, a green card or certificate of mailing, whatever he's referring to, will never ever turn into a summary judgment. Summary judgment is a legal term, and I'm going to show you right now what summary judgment means. Okay, so a summary judgment is a judgment entered by a court. See that? By a court for one party and against another party without a full trial. Okay, so it goes on to say in civil cases, either party can make a pretrial motion for summary judgment. And that's true. However, that is not, you don't get a return receipt of a mailing and it magically turns into a summary judgment. So
now, with that summary judgment, you can actually ask for penalties, you can ask for compensation, or you can ask for an injunction.
Now, with a summary judgment, you don't ask for those things. The summary judgment awards those things. You can ask for that when you're asking for summary judgment, but he hasn't even been into a court yet. So why is he talking about summary judgment? This guy is so all over the place and so very confused. But we'll continue on.
AKA a notice or order of protection. You can say, I wish to be left alone by these individuals. These officers should not pull me over anymore, the sheriffs or the local police department. Now, side note, you should do this in the area in which you live, in your town, in your county, your state. Because what happens is, once you win that fight in your local jurisdiction, you now can take that summary judgment to the next state or to the tri-states, the states that are connected to you that you travel to. And
see, what summary judgment is he talking about? He hasn't been to court. He's mailed some people some papers and they didn't respond. And then he said, take it to your county clerk and you will get an order of protection or an injunction. What?
you send that to them and tell them, listen, I want to put your officers on notice as well. I am going to be exercising my unalienable judgment on that. And whatever you listed.
Yeah, let's back up.
You now get a certificate of mailing. That certificate of mailing is now your mailer certifying that, yes, I sent these documents out on behalf of the plaintiff, and the other party did not respond to me. And the plaintiff said they didn't respond to them. So they are in default. You can get a summary judgment on that. And whatever you listed in your notice now becomes true because it's like an unrebutted affidavit. It's also, you are demanding, in a sense, the public officials address your concerns, and they not. So that certificate of mailing becomes a summary judgment. Now, with that summary judgment, you can actually ask for penalties, you can ask for compensation, or you can ask for an injunction, AKA a notice or order of protection. You can say, I wish to be left alone by these individuals. These officers should not pull me over anymore, the sheriffs or the local police department. Now, side note, you should do this in the area in which you live, in your town, in your county, your state. Because what happens is, once you win that fight in your local jurisdiction, you now can take that summary judgment to the next state or to the tri-states, the states that are connected to you that you travel to. And you send that to them and tell them, listen, I want to put your officers on notice as well. I am going to be exercising my unalienable rights, and I want to be left alone. So as long as I don't, and you don't have to put this in there, but as long as you don't kill, injure, or defraud anyone, crimes are committed, you shouldn't be stopping me. You shouldn't be detaining me. You should be leaving me alone. So that, in essence, is the do not detain list. Do they put you on that list? The jury's still out. The jury's still out. My paperwork is in New York, New Jersey, and I sent some letters to Pennsylvania. I didn't finish the process in Pennsylvania. I need to brush up my paperwork in Pennsylvania. Once I get stopped, after my certificate of default is signed, sealed, I didn't go to court. You can go to the court and get that default judgment. I got them now. It's default judgment. Hold on to that paperwork, because now if you get stopped anytime after receiving that default judgment, you got them, because hold on, they're supposed to leave me alone. Now you go to court if I confuse you on that step. So you get the certificate of you get the default or the certificate of default. You take that to your county. The county clerk is going to stamp that you got a default because the other party failed to respond, which they're going to actually reach out to them and say, okay, listen, what's going on?
Okay, so he's saying you get the certificate of mailing, which is his return receipt, is I guess what he's calling a certificate of mailing. And he said you take it to the county clerk and they stamp it and they reach out to the other party. Okay, well, first of all, your county clerk only records county documents. Usually that's just like, it would be property records. It may be some land patents and things like that, but they have nothing to do with a court or default judgments or reaching out to anybody about a default. That's not your county clerk. That's your court clerk. And that might happen if you filed a case. So, in other words, if you were trying to follow his logic, you would get, I'm sorry, I have a sick dog kind of barking in the back. She sounds like an old man hacking up a lung. I'm sorry, she was a rescue dog. But let me pause and take care of her real quick. Okay, so sorry about the interruption. So, hope I'm following my train of thought back in the right place. But he was talking about going to the county clerk, and the county clerk just records county filings. Now, you could take the return receipt he's talking about, the return receipt for your certified mail, and you could use that as some kind of basis, along with other evidence, I suppose, to go to your court clerk, county court clerk, or your court clerk, whatever they call it in your area. But it's not a county clerk. There's a difference in your county clerk and your court clerk. Now, in some places, your court clerk and your county clerk functions are done by the same person, and they may call it a county clerk. In other words, your county clerk may also be your court clerk. But when you go to her to file a lawsuit, she will not be acting in the capacity of a county clerk. She will be acting in the capacity of a court clerk, and she will stamp those papers appropriately if it's a lawsuit or something that needs to be filed into the court. But she's going to be wearing one hat or the other. And if she's wearing the uh, county clerk hat, she will not stamp court papers unless they are like a judgment that needs to be filed into the county record, which is different from the court record. So they're two different hats, and you may go to the woman called a county clerk, but if she's handling court documents for a lawsuit filing, she's going to be wearing the hat of and acting in the capacity of a court clerk. So make sure you don't send your paperwork to the wrong place. You're not going to be dealing with a county clerk for a lawsuit or any kind of default judgment or summary judgment or default. They're not going to reach out to anybody or anything like that. Okay, let's go on.
Give them some time to respond. Most of the time they don't. And oftentimes they give it to you. Now what happens is,
now he's saying they give you a default. Let's look what a default is. A default is a default judgment, also known as judgment by default. It's a ruling granted by a judge or a court in favor of a plaintiff in the event that the defendant in the legal case fails to respond to a court summons or does not appear in court. The default decision may be vacated if the defendant can establish valid reasons for not appearing in court or ignoring summons. Okay? So you have a summary judgment and a default judgment. Both of those require court action to get. You don't just mail somebody something and get a default judgment, as he said. You don't get your green card back and magically turn that into a summary judgment, as he said. Both of those are court actions. Both of those are rulings by a judge. Okay. Let's go on.
when you try to enforce it, when you attempt to enforce it, the other party may say, well, I don't know what's going on. What's happening? I'm being sued the same way you get the garnishment letters and all these things. Oh, what's going on? Well, you were defaulted. You default them as well. So you have that certificate of default. You have that summary judgment. Now, you're operating your vehicle and you get stopped. Immediately, you go and you file a suit. Now you're suing because there was a notice of intent to sue. Now you're going to file your lawsuit with your summary judgment. And you're going to request that injunction or an order of protection. That is how the do not detain is activated. That is how it gets activated. So if you understand the step, you understand the process. They will now have to put you on their computers in their system. Do not detain, do not stop, do not question.
Okay, this is just insanity. There's no other word for it. This is made up. This is what Chris Howlett calls SMU, stuff made up. That's what this is. It's stuff made up. You don't get to mail out stuff to people and your return receipts and a stamp by a county clerk, which a county clerk isn't even going to give you a stamp on a return receipt or even a judgment if you happen to have one, unless that judgment has to be entered into county records. He's confusing terms, offices, law. It's getting convoluted. I'm getting confused.
And then they put some requisites in there, unless this happens, unless this happens. So speeding, moving, all these different things. Now, if you're speeding and you hit someone, you're speeding, you cause an accident. That is a crime because you cause an injury. They will detain you. You may get arrested. But any basic infraction.
Okay. So having an accident is not necessarily a crime, even if somebody gets hurt. It may or may not be a crime depending on your actions, but just because you have an accident and somebody gets hurt does not automatically mean it's a crime. It may be a crime, it may not, depending on the circumstances.
From jaywalking to, well, marijuana has been decriminalized. So, and it's a misdemeanor to some degree. So it's a low-level crime. Even stuff like that, they are not allowed to detain you. You can put this stuff in your paperwork. If I am moving about, exercising my free rights to do such and so, the burden of proof or the rebuttal is on them to say, well, no, you can't do, well, I mean, the law is the law. If there is a law in your town that says you can't do such and such, they don't need to respond to you and say, the law is the law, it's already there, it's already written. However, these infractions, they shouldn't be stopping you. It depends on your status too. Oh, maybe, see, it's so much entailed in this conversation. Your status should be such that you are now representing yourself as an American citizen with a big C, not a U.S. citizen, or you are national. You are.
Okay. It doesn't matter whether you have a big C or a little c. Nothing he's told you makes any sense. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. It doesn't matter if
national. So that is your status. If you put your status on the record, this is who I am, and I wish to be left alone. This puts the wheels in motion as, okay, you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not one of their subjects. They have to leave you alone.
Okay, here's yet another confusion. He calls himself a citizen, but claims he's not a subject. Well, if you claim you're a citizen, you claim you're a subject. You can be a citizen or you can be a sovereign. There is no such thing as a sovereign citizen. A citizen is a subject. Sovereign is not a subject. So sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. But yeah, so while he's calling himself a citizen, he's saying he's not a subject. Wow, okay.
This is how this process goes. So I hope I did that some justice, and I love to leave it here. I love to leave it and let you guys comment and ask questions, and let's interact. Let's break bread on this particular topic. I also want to talk about relating to your paperwork when you send in the notice of intent to sue. You're going to quote persuasive arguments to the effect of, how long have you been licensed? I've been licensed since I was 17 years old. I'm 50 now. So I've been driving all these years. That means I should have a degree of skill. I should know what I'm doing. I've taken defensive driving courses. All these different things is evidence. And when you are making your case, when you are staking your claim, it is the preponderance of the evidence that sways the court. So with your preponderance of the evidence, meaning, okay, here's my driving record. Here, I've never had any accidents, or, I never had any accidents. I have a clean driving record. I took defensive driving course. These are the reasons to say, well, okay, you shouldn't be stopping me. I am a professional driver. I have a license. I have a license.
Now, remember, we talked about the license is the actual contract that says you agree to follow their rules of traffic. And that puts you basically in commerce. So these things do fall under commerce. And if he's a professional driver, he is absolutely bound to every restriction that they put on him traveling on the roads with his driver's license. He's made an agreement when he became, as he calls himself, a professional driver. Professional means you're being paid for doing that. So if he's a professional driver, then he's driving in commerce. And when you're in commerce, you are subject to the agreements you made when you took out that license. So just wanted to point that out. Also, he's going to mention a bar license and a medical license, and yeah, all of those, they have to abide by the rules that they agreed to when they got that license. So again, Mr. Marshall, Mr. Bud Brownsville is confused on points of the law. I wonder how he feels he's mopping the floor with me now. Okay, let's go on.
That license means I know what I'm doing. Just like lawyers are supposed to have a bar license. That bar license now gives them the right to practice law. They are professionals. A doctor has a license to practice medicine. They are professionals. So you have a driver's license. That means I'm a professional. You shouldn't be stopping me for minor nuisances. Okay, so I hope you get the gist of the message.
Yeah, no. I don't. Sorry. Don't get it at all because you don't understand legal terminology. You don't understand how a court system works. You don't even understand what a return receipt for certified mail is or how it functions or why you would have one. I am making a copy of his entire video in case he goes back and alters it, and as well as leaving a link in the description below for you to go back and view his video on his channel. I do encourage you to watch the whole thing. Now that you understand some of the terms and they've been defined, but I want to look at one more thing. We're not going to go through all of this video. Like I said, I'll leave you the link and I encourage you to go watch it. Watch the whole thing after you understand what's in this video. And so we're gonna jump ahead because he's gonna go into his paperwork and his letters. That's all he does in this section is go over his letters and paperwork. And then when we get over here to about 42 minutes, yeah, let's listen to this last minute or so and we'll wrap this thing up.
On these cases, on that case law, make sure it's good case law. So you have persuasive arguments to back up what you're saying. You send that in. Most of the time, they do not respond to your letters. You default them. You take that default and that certificate of default to the county clerk, and you get a summary judgment.
Okay, again, I don't know what he's talking about, a certificate of default, because at this point in his story, he hasn't been to a court, but now he's going to the county clerk, who he says is going to give him a summary judgment. And that's just not true. You don't go to the county clerk and get a summary judgment. You get a summary judgment from a court in a court of law.
Then you sit and you wait. You wait until now they breach, because it's now an agreement. They have to leave you alone, so to speak. It's an unspoken, or it's an unofficial ruling. Yeah, you have that summary judgment on this particular matter, but
Okay, there is no such thing as an unofficial ruling. You either get a ruling from a court or you don't. There is no unofficial ruling. There's rulings, period.
they may not know about it. You can send them a letter. You can send them just summary judgment to say, okay, do this now. Leave me alone. Put me on that list.
You're not going to send somebody a summary judgment they're not going to know about because, again, you would have had to go through court to get one. So, I am worn out now with Mr. Bud Brownsville, but now that you understand some of the terms he uses and some of the places and things like that, go back and take a look at his video and then decide if this is somebody you want to learn from and put possibly some legal action under the tutelage of a man who doesn't even know what a summary judgment and a default judgment. I doubt he's ever been in a court, but he sure does have a big ego. I'll give him that. The way you learn law is you look up the terms and you look up the law. You look up all the terms in a legal dictionary and you look up the laws in the actual law books, in the actual code. So that's how you learn law. That's how I teach. I just show people where to look things up, where to find resources, what kinds of motions we've filed, what kinds of suits, what kind of results. And, I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't had my butt royally kicked in court a few times. But that's what's going to happen if you go to court. There are no magic bullets. And I don't care if the law's even on your side. We have seen corrupt courts and judges all across the country. So I've made my fair share of mistakes in my filings and pleadings because I was learning trial by fire. And I've been in the courts and I've studied the law and I've looked up and I've found out where to get resources, where to get cases to cite, how to look up and verify that a site somebody is giving you applies in your case. All these kinds of things you learn with time and experience and with looking up terms and looking up the actual law. So that's what we do. We show you the actual laws rather than going through a word salad of non-sequential actions using terms that we don't even understand. What we do is teach you the terms, show you the law, where to find it, what it is, cases that have been decided before. How do you find those? Where do you find those? What are some that we can share with you? Those kinds of things. I hope that people will realize through this that you can't just take somebody and just because they have a lot of views, they know what they're talking about. That's not necessarily true. And so I want to encourage you to go watch his whole video. Like I said, I have a copy in case he decides to amend it later and call me a liar. But I hope that this taught you something, and I hope that will make some things clear to you. As I said, we could talk about the do not detain list later in another video, but I can tell you this, I didn't go to court to get it. I did have to send some paperwork out, none of which was what he said, and none of it went to his people, he said. And I doubt he has a do not detain. As you can see in my comments, I said if he had one, he'd have a letter from the Federal Trade Commission, because when you send out these notices, you're going to send them to like 7 different places. And you're going to be sending them an affidavit of life and some attestations and a few things. And then you're going to get a response back only from the Federal Trade Commission. And they're going to let you know that they've been notified and that they have put you in all the computer systems, because they got notified and activated when you noticed everybody else in your packet. Once you notify all those other offices that you are actually supposed to notice when you do a D&D, once you notify them, the Federal Trade Commission is activated, and then they send out notice to all the law enforcement and that kind of thing. So that's the way that actually happens. And I also want to note that just because you get a do not detain doesn't mean you won't be detained. It doesn't even mean you won't be arrested. I know lots of people who've had do not detains and been arrested, including myself. Now, once that happens, of course, you do have a claim. Sometimes we take it to court and make claims. I'm doing one now. And in probably about 2 videos from now, I'm going to show you the arrest and subsequent actions of the corrupt cop stop. That story is still going on. We'll have more for that playlist. Oh my gosh, does it get good. I can't wait to get these videos out and get this story done. But anyway, a couple videos from now, I will show you an arrest. And at that time, I did have a do not detain. And we're also going to go into what happened with that and what's going to happen with the suit. May have to wait on some of the suit stuff because we'll be in a suit. But anyway, we'll show you what happens. Usually they do not detain, and I can tell you after they did this time and saw what happened and what I did, they had a warrant on me right after that for failure to appear again. And I still didn't appear. They had a warrant, verified the warrant, and then told me I was free to go. And I'm going to post all those videos because some of them are pretty funny. I can't wait. I'm really excited. But anyway, I just wanted to bring y'all this today. I don't want y'all to start listening to these people like they understand or know the law. And I want you to see real clearly they obviously don't even know the very minimum basics. So stay tuned and keep yourself safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.